Welcome to UpWell The Podcast. I'm Sarah, and this is my beautiful co-host, Katie. As fellow female entrepreneurs turned friends and now business partners, we are so happy you're here.
With every episode, it is our sole purpose to share authentic conversations to inspire your personal level up. Take our curiosity, add your best intentions, and flow with us in the UpWell. Hey everybody, welcome to UpWell The Podcast. I am Katie, and as you can see, I'm sitting here in the studio by myself, but Miss Sarah is with me today. She is just at her house because she's feeling a little under the weather, but we are back together again, and we are super excited you're here. We have an awesome guest that my Sarah is going to introduce to you.
Yes. Hi, you guys. I am missing Katie. I miss you. I love our time together on Fridays. It's literally one of my favorite days because we get to spend quality time together. And usually we have some amazing person joining us. So we do have an amazing person joining us today, though. My friend, Sarah, not to be confused with myself. I found Sarah through Instagram probably about a year ago, but I have been dabbling in the realm of astrology. And as you guys know from past episodes, Katie and I both enjoy learning more about astrology and how it impacts our lives collectively and personally. So I was super excited to reach out to Sarah of Seven Moons Astrology, who graciously agreed to join us today. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you both.
Yes. Well, let's jump right in because I think not just this year, but going back probably since 2020. It's
2020.
It's been a little crazy. So can you give us, I want to know more about you, obviously. I want to know how you got into astrology and how you got started. And then I want you to take it to kind of what's been going on the past few years.
Yeah, I think a review of the past is in order, given the nature of what has unfolded ever since COVID happened. And there were some significant transits related to that we can talk about. But before we go there, yeah, my name is Sarah Kirby. I am the creator and astrologer behind Seven Moons Astrology. And as of the past year, I would also consider myself somewhat of an expert in human design as well. And I use an integrative approach of both of those methods to help my clients align their energy and live a more flowing life, is how I'll say it. And I got started, well, the way that I got started is actually a bit of a story. I think my first introduction to astrology came from my grandmother when I was probably no more than 7 years old. And she and I shared the same birthday. We were very, very close. And she came up to me one day, and I remember she handed me this thick textbook on astrology, but it was just about the sun signs and consumable for a child. She threw it in front of me, and I just dove right in. And I just remember just eating it up. And I always wanted to be an astronaut when I was a little girl. There was always this fascination with the cosmos. So, I went through school, I got socialized. You don't meet an astrologer on the street every day. And so I was really good at science, and I took it in a more scientific way. And I actually went to college for aerospace engineering.
Wow.
But when I got there, I discovered that was devoid of life, is the way that I'll put it. Yeah. And I didn't like it, but I was at an engineering school, so I didn't want to leave. I had a good scholarship there, and I thought the practical solution was to switch to the other thing I was good at, which was chemistry. So I did chemical engineering. But something was missing for me, and it was the interaction with people. And I was so obsessed with studying people. I have a stellium in Scorpio. So there was this component that was missing that really called my soul. So after college, I decided I didn't want to do engineering, but I needed to leverage my technical skills. And I was just trying to make my way. So I did business consulting for a few years, and I helped work with highly technical IT people get their messages across to more executive business type folks. But the way that I thought of it at that time was I was really getting a free education in business school. And after that, during COVID, that was such a transformative period in all of our lives, really due to the transits that were at play at that time. And I took that opportunity to start my business using my passion for the sky and for people and the business knowledge that I had gained. And now I would say that I'm still a scientist at heart, but really the science that I'm studying is the esoteric science of astrology and human design. So that's I guess the long story more briefly put.
That's
No,
amazing.
I know.
That's
I
amazing.
love that. And I think it's so funny because Katie and I have similar but different stories where we kind of started out on one path and then we both pivoted because we knew that that wasn't exactly where we were supposed to be any longer. So I think that's kind of fun. Maybe you can read our charts someday because I'm sure there's probably an explanation for that in our stars.
Yeah, absolutely. In the future, something fun we could do is do that on a podcast, pull up the charts and talk about it. That would be really fun. But when did you all do that? When did you start UpWell?
UpWell started in, we actually recorded our first episode almost exactly 1 year ago. It was New Year's Eve of last year.
Okay.
And then we released it on 2/3/23 of this year was our first, when we released episode 1. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because we play with dates and we, you know, like the numbers and stuff, and because we kind of feel that that's all that universal energy that's out there all plays into kind of the success and flow of things. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I mean that I help my clients do that all the time. We call that electional astrology, the art of selecting a date that supports a positive outcome for whatever the endeavor is. Yeah,
love
Oh, I love
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
I actually got into astrology. Just a real quick thing, because you talked about the sky. Once I learned as a child that the moon controlled the ocean, I was hooked. I was hooked. I'm a Pisces, so I'm a water sign. So
Ooh,
that,
yeah.
you know, that pulled me into it even more. But from it was that point on, I was in junior high, and I remember, well, I'm a water sign because I knew what I was, you know, Pisces wise. And then it was like the moon controls the ocean. What? And then from there, I've been intrigued ever since.
Yeah. Well, and Pisces, that's such a transcendentally oriented sign, interested in the mysticism and the reason why and the mysteries behind everything that happens. So that
And
makes
that's
sense.
so
And
me.
being women as well, you know, our cycles related to the moon. So yeah, the moon has a
Yes,
big deal.
yes. I tried
Sarah,
to explain that to a man the other day, and he just couldn't wrap his head around it. He couldn't
yeah,
wrap. He was like, "What?" I'm like,
good luck.
"Never mind."
Yeah. Sarah, what's your sign?
I'm a Cancer.
You're a Cancer. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm a Sagittarius. So we
Oh, fun. See, I
have a
love
few
that
of us
because
represented.
Katie and I have kind of just dove into our charts a little bit deeper after learning a little bit more about rising signs and moon signs. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that
Yes.
in the coming time. But, you know, it's so fun to see how those different things come up in your life. You know, you can really start to see, like, I'm an Aries rising, and, you
Mm,
know, 10 to 15 years ago, I was through and through water sign. I mean, emotional, you know, all the things that people think Cancers and Pisces are. But as I've aged and kind of stepped into that rising sign,
yes.
I mean, people would probably assume I'm a fire sign at first meeting just because of how I present myself, my confidence, how I speak, you know. So,
And because
I can
you
attest to
are,
that.
yeah, you're a fire sign, right? And what you're pointing out is absolutely accurate, that as we age, we embody the gifts and the approach of the rising sign a little bit more obviously. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I love
Yeah.
that. Well, let's actually talk about that for a really brief second, and then we'll
Okay.
talk about kind of collectively what's happening in the sky. But tell us, I think probably most people are aware of their star sign or their sun sign. There, you know,
Hmm.
that's the 30-day window that you were born in, that you can read the newspaper horoscope, right? Like that's where people kind of start getting curious about astrology. So tell us a little bit more about what a rising and a moon sign are, and you know, how people can find that information.
Right. So, you know, this is really the crux of how you get deeper into astrology, because as you said, everybody knows about their sun sign, and the sun sign is important. Don't get me wrong, right? The sun sign represents, I would say, our self concept. We can see
Mhm.
ourselves in our sun sign pretty clearly. And it's very important for men as well, because the sun in astrology has a lot to do with the masculine principle of energy. So men will connect strongly with their sun sign. But the rising sign is really more the gifts and skills and talents that were fostered in us at a young age. It is our psychological approach to the world. So rather than the ego or the self concept, it's really truly more about the personality at a fundamental psychological level, and the first impression that people gather when they meet us. So we will have, you know, the talents and also the challenges associated with the rising sign. The rising sign is very important to understand because it sets the structure and foundation of the entire natal chart. And that's how we do predictions in astrology and understand what's happening in your life, because it sets the house system and the placement of where the other signs are in your chart. So oftentimes people will read their sun signs horoscope, and if they are spiritually minded or open-minded, they'll be able to see how it applies to them. But sun signs horoscopes are also the same exact reason why people write off astrology, because it's not the full picture, and you really need to focus on your rising sign in order to get an accurate horoscope, especially one that is being written generally for a wide audience and not specific to your natal chart. So I would say, first thing you would do is you would go online to any one of these astrology calculators. Most of them are reliable, but the one that I prefer is astro.com. And you would go to any of these free sites, plug in your information. You would need your birth date, the location of birth, and as precise of a time as you can find. And that will give you the rising sign. And from there, that's the horoscope that I would read. Now, the moon sign is very important for women because it represents the feminine aspect of consciousness. So as women become more familiar with themselves and get in touch with themselves, we can also see and identify with our moon sign qualities, perhaps even more so than the sun. And the moon, for all people, regardless of gender, has to do with the inner emotional nature and the subjective interpretation of reality. And it also, most importantly, in my opinion, represents our absolute needs for emotional security through life. And so when you look at your sun sign or your rising sign, here's where I'll say, okay, you have some talents, you have some gifts. Here's maybe some things in your personality you should work on, right? But the moon sign, I say, no, never deny yourself of your needs. These are your true needs. These are things not to be changed, but to be embraced and to partner with people and be in relationships where those needs are honored and met. Otherwise, you will feel totally insecure through life. So that's how we use the moon.
Ooh, that's good.
Love that.
I know my moon, and now I'm gonna have to really dive into, compatibility and just, the needs of my moon sign. So that's super interesting. So going back to the wildness that has been the last 3 years of everyone's life, tell us a little bit about what you knew, even probably previous to the occurrences that happened in the world, and how the stars aligned for all of that to kind of happen.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to late 2019, early 2020. The huge eruption of events that occurred collectively at that time were associated with a rare and powerful alignment of the outer planets. So when I say the outer planets, I'm referring to everything beyond Earth. So the outer planets, they move very slowly from our perspective, right? They transit the zodiac from Earth's vantage point very slowly. They stay in a sign for a very long time. So when they switch into a sign or they come together from our perspective, this will undoubtedly create notable circumstances on Earth in our reality. And so what was occurring in late 2019 and early 2020 was the alignment of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in the sign of Capricorn, late degrees Capricorn. This is very rare. It doesn't happen very often. I mean, maybe every 20 years or so, you'll get an alignment like this, more rarely with Pluto. And it's a malefic alignment, meaning it's uncomfortable and brings negative manifestations. Well, the reason why I say that is because Saturn is known as the great malefic in astrology. It's about challenge, hardship. To some extent, it's about suffering, endings, the collapse of time, and death. And the reason why is because up until we had modern technology, Saturn was the last planet that was visible to the naked eye. So the early astrologers would look at Saturn and they assigned the significations to it that it represented the endings of things. But it's also the boundary of time and has to do with reconstructing reality, tearing things down and rebuilding them. So that's layer one. Layer two is Pluto was involved. Pluto is about destruction. It's about ultimate transformation. It's about rebirth. And it can be a perilous process, we'll put it that way. Jupiter, of course, is typically thought of as the great benefic planet, bringing good fortune and positive manifestations. But the reason why it was so problematic and it didn't really do anything to assist is because Jupiter is very uncomfortable in the sign of Capricorn. These are antithetical energies, they don't go together. And so Jupiter there can't really do much of anything except for magnify what Saturn and Pluto are already doing. So they come together, it doesn't sound so good, right? Well, what sign are they in? Capricorn. Capricorn has to do with the highest structures of society. So government, corporations, and the rule of law. And in our personal lives, Capricorn has to do with our long-term plans, commitments that we make, sometimes as long as 30 years of time. It's about our purpose and our sense of trajectory through life, the legacy that we are leaving behind, the structure, the overall underpinnings of the life that we are building. So what happened at that time is those alignments came in, totally broke down reality, reconstructed the way that most people think about government. They made people suspicious of government. That's a plutonic influence. Corporations deeply suffered, right? I mean, no one was able to work. The economy was collapsing. The larger structures of society were being torn down and rebuilt or transformed, to say the least. And in our individual lives, that same energy made us all look inward and say, okay, everything I've been doing for the past, in some cases, several decades, depending on how old you are, it's not right. It's out of alignment. The commitments that I'm in, they don't work. The job that I'm doing, the partner that I'm with, the plans that I thought I had for my life, none of these things fit me anymore. They're very wrong. They are causing me pain, suffering, stress. I don't want these things anymore. So in 2020, we felt that, we began to integrate that, we began to process that, and we moved forward toward a journey of figuring out how to change those things. And some people, they didn't want to do it, so it was ripped from them. It was a painful process, and some people jumped right in. Questions?
No,
I can attest to all of that. Like there, and I feel like there may have been certain areas of people's lives where they were willing to make the change, and then other parts of their lives they were wanting to hang on to it because it was the comfortable, the familiar, and they're like, no, that's supposed to be who I'm with or the job I'm supposed to have. Where other people were like, nope, let's go, let's start a new job. Okay, I'm getting a divorce. Like it was, I think in different aspects of your life, you could have pulled one way very easily, but then were very hesitant otherwise. And I can attest to that. Business wise, I was like, let's go. Relationship wise, I was very hesitant, but ended up making a very difficult change in that realm. And now it's kind of like, as we move into 2024, me personally, I'm sitting here like, okay, anything's possible. I have a very open kind of like, ooh, 1,000 different paths that I could potentially go down. So I'm looking forward to what 2024 has to offer.
I think the big shakeup really, impacted a lot of us at a societal level because we started to question the norms. I mean, even like, I remember when everything was kind of closed down and people were enjoying spending more time at home, just like looking at, why do I have to be doing something every weekend? Why do I have to have plans all the time? Why do I have to say yes to every invitation I get? So I think, like you said, everything happened for, it was like that perfect storm where we all did get that opportunity to kind of look at and see what is not working for me right now, whether that is something grand scale like the government and corporations or in our own personal lives. So I love how you broke that down.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And Katie, to your point about, some of us were willing to embrace these changes in our life, and it depends on the area of life that was being targeted by this. Certain signs are more adaptable. They're more favorable for change. They embrace change. And there are areas in our life where these changes are smoother, but it absolutely was a period of time where we were questioning, Sarah, to your point, the established norms and traditions, and Capricorn does represent those things. What is traditional to us? What is known to us? It's the sign that precedes Aquarius, which is about the future and progressing forward. So, we were definitely questioning the conservative approach, and working too hard and committing to things that aren't aligned. And so it was the opportunity to change that. And moving forward to 2021 and 2022, Katie, you really said it well when you were talking about that kind of push and pull between what I'm releasing easily and what I'm still stuck holding on to. And that was actually represented in the transits as well. Another outer planet alignment that doesn't happen all that often, which was the Saturn square Uranus transit that we had over the course of those 2 years. So Saturn had since moved into Aquarius, Uranus was in Taurus, and it was this push and pull between I need to liberate myself from these old things versus I need to hold on to what I know and what is safe. And I think we spent the better part of 2 years learning to release what we were clinging to and accepting that and cleaning up the mess that we made from changing other things far too quickly and disruptively. Yeah.
Yep.
You just
That was
nailed my
my
life in a nutshell there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely my my career
Mhm.
Yeah.
as a whole. I literally went from one career to the next in 2020. I mean, I was like done and I shifted careers, but then I spent 21 and 22 trying to really figure out how to navigate what I wanted to do and start to build the new while I was still trying to get out of, this temporary thing that was safe. When I switched careers, I thought that me working at this place was going to be it, and then I
Mhm.
quickly began to realize I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to be an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, solopreneur, and create my own systems. But I was really unsure how. So I stayed in that kind of bubble of back and forth for a really long time until the end of 2022. So that's pretty on point.
And
Yeah.
Katie, how about you?
For me, mine came more on the personal side of things, where I found myself in kind of a push-pull with a particular relationship that I was in, and ultimately went back and forth, and it was just this push and pull of knowing what I needed to do, but being afraid to do it, and like that hanging on, but then letting go and pushing away, and then pulling myself back in and realizing it wasn't right, and until ultimately this past summer, where I kind of released it, and I was just like, okay, this is scary, but I'm releasing it. And I released it when everything went into retrograde, when we had like 7 planets in retrograde, was when it all happened. And let me tell you, life was gnarly for a while, just kind of navigating, just surviving, and just like understanding the energy that was coming my way. So yeah, that was mine.
And I had the same thing. Why do you think I've been in hiding? So it's been this summer was wild. A lot changed this year, but those 2 years, 2020 was okay. Everything I have been doing is clearly wrong. 2021 was all right. I'm going to move in a new direction. And the second half of 2021 and 2022 entirely was all like, okay, I've messed things up over here. I need to redo this. I need to undo this. I've moved too quickly here. I've not moved fast enough here. And the struggle to break free. And it was kind of suffocating and heavy and
Yes.
oppressing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 2023, I think people were like really ready for a sense of calm and things to be moving in the right direction again. But we really weren't quite there yet, especially for my Pisces out there, because Saturn moved into Pisces.
Yeah.
And so the mutable signs are now feeling the pressure of Saturn, while fixed signs are getting a bit of relief.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2023, in the spring, we had a great deal of change because Pluto started to come into Aquarius and Saturn shifted into Pisces. And then over the summer, we had the Leo retrograde, the Venus retrograde in Leo. And we were also experiencing the shift of the nodal axis into Aries and Libra.
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
2023 was the year of relationship change. 2023 was the year of relationship contracts of all sorts, friendships, romantic relationships, business partnerships, just agreements that we make with people in general. We're all being shuffled in order to better support the direction that we're now going to be headed in to 2024. But for most people, it wasn't necessarily pleasant, although there were some people that made it through, lots of marriages, but also lots of divorces and separations, and people that you thought would always be there, sometimes you discover they are not. And so there's one of the things that I noticed about 2023 that I wanted to share with you guys is an interesting fact about Saturn. So when Saturn entered Pisces, we know that what we can expect is that there is going to be a 3-year season of learning, increased compassion, unconditional love, and forgiveness, what Pisces represents, through challenging experiences, because that's Saturn, sometimes including experiences of loss or death, grief, but also wading through confusion and indecision and feeling maybe lost or ungrounded. And the symbolism on a collective level was so obvious because the first time Saturn went retrograde in 2023 was June 17th. But on June 18th, that Titan submarine, that's when the event with the Titan submarine imploded. And to me, I thought the symbolism of that couldn't have been more Saturn and Pisces. So Saturn halts in the sky, and nearly the same day, the submarine in the deep sea where it's dark and you can't see and everything's confusing. You don't know where you're going. And maybe it feels like you're drowning, right? And there's this heavy pressure from all around and there's nothing you can do. And it feels like you're going to implode. That's Saturn and Pisces. That's the symbolism of it. Yeah. So we worked through that. We did.
That was great. So now as we move into 2024, are there any key dates that we should be kind of on the lookout for anything that could be happening in the skies?
Of course. Yeah, there's plenty of key dates. I have them written down. Really, the biggest hotspot in 2024 is April. We have a lot going on in April. So we'll start with March 25th. So end of March, we've got March 25th is a lunar eclipse in Libra. So eclipse season is always an active period of change and transformation. And similar to this past year, the Aries Libra eclipse cycle has to do with shifting and reordering relationships in our life, and also learning how to prioritize our own independence, release codependency, to make decisions for our own benefit, embrace a little bit more healthy selfishness, care a little bit less what other people think or what is socially polite or acceptable, to consult people less and to take charge on our own more. So more Aries rising things like Sarah, right? To solve the problems and to pioneer and take risk. It's also about taking risk and starting something new and stepping into a fresh start. So that energy gets heightened and amplified again in the spring. But on April 8th, we have a very, very big and rare eclipse, which is the Great American Total Solar Eclipse. So that's April 8th, 2024. This is a very powerful eclipse because it's total, meaning we will actually be able to see throughout the middle of the United States the eclipse during the day, where the moon aligns perfectly in between the earth and the sun and totally blocks out the light of the sun. So you'll need the glasses to look at the ring, and it will have biggest impact over the area that it is having its visible path. So the United States is really affected by this, and this won't happen again for another 20 years. And it is in the sign of Aries. So again, it's emphasizing that Aries principle of embracing the new chapter, having the fresh start, and finally, after long last, things picking up and moving at a faster pace, because Aries is the sign of fast action, and we've been dealing with a lot of slow, stagnant energy for the past few years. So to me, it really feels as though we are arriving at the new chapter that we originally identified and set out to achieve so long ago in 2020. So that's in April. Now, you'd have to look at
how fitting that is for it to be the astrological kind of new year as well, for all of that shift to happen during Aries, when Aries is seen as like the January of astrology. So
yes, the beginning.
I love the correlation there.
Absolutely. And that's not all, because April continues to be really emphasizing those themes when we have another rare transit of the outer planets, which is Jupiter conjoining Uranus in the sign of Taurus. So this is not going to happen again for another 14 years. And certainly it won't happen in Taurus for way longer than that. So the signs to pay attention to in your natal charts are Aries and Taurus, because this is where the biggest change is coming in the spring. So Jupiter
Those are our risings, Sarah. That because I'm a Taurus rising and Sarah is an Aries rising. Those are our risings.
Perfect. Perfect. So what you both can expect is a lot of momentum and groundbreaking change to come in, right? So Jupiter and Uranus conjoining to me is there are some things that we'll talk about on a collective scale that might be problematic, as there usually are, because the collective will tend to manifest the energy at a lower frequency. But for overall, I do see this as a positive alignment, because historically, when these planets come together, they correspond to a great deal of creative and inventive breakthrough. So those of us in the astrological community are expecting a lot of scientific developments to come through at this time. And we're also hoping to see a lot of positive change, I hope, with the financial markets, because it's in the sign of Taurus, which is about money and income and the material security of the world. And so Uranus is the principle of future and change and moving forward, right? It's associated with Aquarius. And so one of the things that we have our eyes on is what's going to happen with Bitcoin or digital currency or any of these things that have to do with the future of money and the technology behind the commerce and markets and trade around the world. There can be great developments with sustainability and how we move goods and use resources, energy resources in the world. And so lots of inventions will probably take place this year that we'll look back and say, oh my gosh, that was really a groundbreaking time. Things that could happen that are maybe less desirable would be literal earthquakes around the world, because Taurus representing the earth, being an earth sign, Uranus being about change and disruption and shaking things up, moving them forward at a quick pace, even if it means breaking and destabilizing the current ground, and Jupiter magnifying and expanding those things. It seems pretty literal that we might expect like volcanic activity or shifting plates. But in our personal lives and for individuals, this is a time where you will look to your chart and see, this is the area where I'm going to experience perhaps an unexpected breakthrough or a creative breakthrough. This is a time where things may change rapidly in ways that I could not have anticipated, and in a way that helps me make sort of a quantum leap into the future. That's how I'll describe it for us personally. And so for Taurus rising, could essentially change your whole life at a rapid pace, because it will light up your whole chart. And then for Aries, you've got the eclipses going on at the same time. So this is a launch pad for you both.
That's exciting.
High five, Sarah.
Right.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And it's interesting because as this year has ended and the shifts that I have personally gone through, the last half of 2023, I feel like I am mentally and emotionally and spiritually prepared for a major shift in my life. And I think I needed to settle the things that have been settled now in 2023 in order to open me up to receive the change that's coming forward in 2024. And so I'm excited to hear that with having a Taurus rising, that's in my sign to, potentially have some groundbreaking things happen that could really change the trajectory of my life.
Right.
Well,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Oh, sorry. I like that you were talking about disruption. I like that you used that word with Uranus, because I think so many people, they look to astrology to tell them their fortune, tell them the good things that are coming into their life. But as many of us probably have all experienced in our lives, whether you're into astrology or not, sometimes the best things come from the biggest disruptions, like the biggest chaos, the worst crumbling moments of our lives usually give way to something that we never expected or something even better. So I like that you kind of described that could be potentially what we experience depending on, where it's in your chart. But
yeah, and absolutely. When I think of, for those familiar with tarot, I think of like the Aries eclipse, the total solar eclipse in Aries is like the Fool card, where you don't really know how you're going to do what you're going to do, but you're going to go forward anyway and just see what happens. And there's a bit of naivete to it that I think without which we would not be able to push ourselves in the new direction that we know we're really supposed to go. And the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is more like the Tower card. So it can present negatively for some people, but is certainly a blessing in disguise if it does go that way. But it can also be really liberating in a positive sense, and a time when fixed signs are probably embracing change more than they might normally.
Oh, I love that.
Okay.
Is there anything, okay, so past the eclipse happening in April, what else is maybe transiting, or any bigger moments toward the end of the year?
Right. So, another thing to note about this coming year is that Pluto will finally make its way into Aquarius for good. So, what has been happening is Pluto has been sort of dancing between the last degrees of Capricorn, where it's been for the last 20 years, into the first degrees of Aquarius, where it will be for the next 20 years. And so, these slow moving planets, it's, they have strong undercurrent in the evolution of our lives. It's not always very obvious in a day-to-day basis, but when you look back, they really define the eras and chapters in our life at large. And Pluto will be doing that dance a few times this year, but by the end of this year, November 19th, 2024, it makes its way into Aquarius for good, and it will be there until 2044. Now, what's interesting about this is that it will actually essentially transform society over the next 20 years, because Aquarius does represent society and humanity and the direction we're moving. So I'm expecting a lot of massive technological developments. And one of the first things that we saw when Pluto first touched into Aquarius was the release of ChatGPT and the proliferation of AI. So it's pretty clear that one of the defining things that this transit will do is transform society through the introduction of AI and all the subsequent impacts that it has. Now, Pluto in Aquarius is one of the things that I'm expecting. I don't love the transit. In the end, I think it will always serve because it always does. But there are some things about it that I think, based on history, we should keep an eye out for over the next 20 years, and for the way that's reflected in this year, which would be, probably governmental push to increase censorship, the manipulation of media, the control of digital access and internet, cyber warfare. To me, I'm getting the idea of like Cold War, but through social media. Like a Cold War that is waged through social media. And I won't say more, but I think listeners will know like how that could occur. And the reason is because this transit is happening at the same time that we have, the Aries eclipses. And on a collective scale, Aries and Libra are about war and peace. So the eclipses were actually associated with the breakout of the war in Jerusalem and Palestine. And so you can see that this story is going to continue to develop. So in the spring and in the fall of 2024, I would keep your eyes open to what's going on in the Middle East. We're going to expect a lot more developments and peak moments in that story to unfold in the spring and fall. But when Pluto makes its final shift into Aquarius after the spring, Jupiter will have moved on to Gemini. So Jupiter in Gemini, at the early degrees of Gemini, is going to increase all of the talk and chatter. There's going to be a square between Jupiter and Saturn in Pisces at that time as well. And so there's a story to me that looks a little bit like the use of technology and media to increase conflict or to renegotiate the way nations work together. So those are things to pay attention to on the collective scale, but individually, that's really only going to affect people who have personal planets at the very early degrees of the fixed signs. So Taurus, Aquarius, Leo, and Scorpio. And And then the fall again is our next eclipse season. So September 17th, we have our first eclipse in Pisces for the last 10 years. So we'll begin to see what manifestations will occur. That's kind of like a preview trailer for what it will be like to have eclipses in Pisces and Virgo in 2025. So you would look to see what house you have Pisces in to understand what themes will play out there. And then we have another eclipse on October 2nd in Libra. We also have a Mars retrograde again. Do y'all remember that when we had the Mars retrograde in Gemini?
Yep.
Yeah. This one's happening in Leo and Cancer.
Okay.
So Mars retrograde typically changes the way that we work and where we are investing our energy and motivation. So that's coming up starts December 6th of 2024 and carries us into 2025. So we have another season of, after a big year of big change and lots of exciting action and new things to do and the fresh start, we get to the end of the year and it will probably feel like, gee, I've been denying my happiness and self-care a little bit because I got too excited and jumped into too many things head first because I had a tower moment and a fool card, and maybe I need to reevaluate some things. So that's not going to be super hard, but will assist us in getting things back in balance.
Yeah, and that comes right before the holiday season. So that's probably kind of that, I don't know. It's a good time, I think, probably for a lot of people to experience you know what, I need to focus on myself again. Maybe I had my foot on the gas for a little too long.
Right. That's exactly right. And we always have our foot on the gas a little too hard when we're in a North Node Aries season. And that serves us. But, I think that will be a good way to round out the year. And I'm not expecting that one to feel quite as difficult as the Mars retrograde in Gemini that we had in 2022. So, yeah, I mean, that's the year at large.
Is there any positive aspects that we can utilize in the coming weeks? This episode will drop right after the new year. So everyone will be listening, in hopes that something is going to, maybe energize and inspire them to take action on something or to do something in the very beginning parts of the year. Is there anything notable happening in January or February?
Well, my philosophy is that this is not the best time to start projects and to begin your new year endeavors because of the astrological alignments. And I think one of the reasons why so many resolutions will flop or we will not sustain and commit to them is because we're setting them at the wrong time of year based on the Gregorian calendar. So, everyone wants to get back hitting the ground running in January when it's Capricorn season. That's not about that. Capricorn is not the sign of newness and fresh starts. It's about the sign of maintaining what we've already started. And so my true and honest answer to that is actually that the energy to take advantage of is in the spring, March, April season, like we talked about before. But we do have the Mercury retrograde that has been happening in Sagittarius and Capricorn ending. So that's going to end on the 1st, actually, which means it's a better time to, first of all, technology will behave better. We ran into that at the beginning of this podcast. But it's a good time, I think, now in January to begin planning. I think it's more of a planning energy than it is rushing. And Mercury will be direct in Sagittarius, which helps us to envision the larger picture. And then it will move into Capricorn, by the end of January, which will help us to get the practical and pragmatic components together so we know what work actually needs to be done and help us ground it into reality. And we can begin to move a little bit more slowly. Besides that, I think really the major energy is in the spring beyond the new and full moons the typical new and full moons that we'll have in between then.
Oh, that's
I think there's something to be said for what you just said there with using this time as planning as opposed to like action and doing. Winter to me has always been viewed as a time of like rest and reflect and just kind of turning inward a little bit more. And we're just into the beginning stages of winter. And yes, we're going to be gaining light in, as the days continue, but there's something to be said for taking this time to just maintain what we have and think about, yes, what we want to do, but then using the spring as, the birth of everything, which is spring in nature is the birth of life, of everything. So I like that you pinpointed that and saying that, using the spring to kind of execute the goals, but using this time to plan was really great.
Couldn't agree more with how you said that.
Yeah.
Katie loves winter, so
I love winter. I'm a winter girl.
I like winter too. I love the restful pace of winter, and there is kind of, something about the North Node in Aries is really energizing people to act. So there's kind of this adrenalized pressure to get going. Aries always, maybe you can attest to this, Sarah. Aries always kind of feels like it's not enough. I'm behind. I got to move faster. And so a lot of that is just mental chatter. Really let it unfold at a natural pace. You are moving at the correct pace. Envision, plan, take small steps, and be ready to hit the ground running in the spring.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
I love that too. So, Sarah, Kirby, where can people find you if they wanted to, hear a little bit more about what your knowledge on things? I know you're taking a little bit of a hiatus from social media, but you do have a really great YouTube channel. So where could people find you if they're wanting to learn more about astrology?
All right. So I am 7 Moons Astrology on all platforms. I've got a YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. I tend to be most active on the YouTube and Instagram, although I have been on a bit of a hiatus, as you mentioned. So I would say just check me out on 7 Moons Astrology. My Instagram and YouTube have links to have a consult with me individually. I offer many different types of consultations, and I've still been working with clients this entire time. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm happy to meet in person. And I do Zoom consultations all over the world. So that's how you can find me and book a reading with me for either astrology or human design or both. I really work with both of them in all of my readings, regardless of what you ask for. So that's where you can find me. And, I'd be happy to chat with anybody who wants to learn more.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sad that I wasn't with Katie, but I'm happy that we're all here together via Zoom. That's one good thing that technology has brought us in the past years.
Yes, ma'am. It was a true pleasure.
Yes, and we would love to have you back on the show again, to where maybe we can dive deeper into like an example of each of our birth charts and kind of explain a little bit more in depth with our listeners as to what you can really get from a birth chart and what that kind of all entails for your life and purpose and personality and all of the good stuff that comes with the skies.
Absolutely. And I know you all with your podcast are focused on overall wellness, but one of the things I've been diving into recently is physical health and optimal diet for the signs based on both their astrology and human design charts. So maybe that's something fun we could do.
That is awesome.
Something fun that we can do. I would love that. That would be great. Maybe we'll come to Austin and we can do it in person.
That would be so much fun. That would be
I'm down
fun.
I'm down for a road trip.
Come on there. Yeah, absolutely.
Heck yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on this episode of UpWell The Podcast. You can find UpWell The Podcast on all of the places online at UpWell The Podcast. You can find myself personally at barefoot.katie. You can find Sarah at Sarah Barron. So until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and take care of the world around you. Bye, guys.